Welcome back. What's going on, Todd?
Hey, what's going on, Phil? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Welcome back to Late Night Green Interview Edition. Hope you're doing well this evening. We got a good one for you tonight.
I know it's a good one, so.
It's an important one. And it's so important that you decided that you can even miss the beginning part of the Cowboys game.
Yeah, I'm struggling through that, but I'm just going to represent with this shirt right now and go with it.
And you know I don't feel bad for you, right?
Yeah!
Here we go! All right, well, we'll get right down to business. Tonight we have a really special guest with us. I have been speaking with her for quite some time because we've been super interested in having her on the show. We are both from Pennsylvania, and this is an important issue for not only, what's going on in the cannabis industry, but it's important for us here in Pennsylvania. So without further ado, allow me to introduce Pennsylvania State Representative Emily Kinkead. Kinkead or Kinkead?
Kinkead.
Kinkead. Welcome to the show, Emily. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're doing really good, and we're excited to have you here this evening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me onto the show.
You're very welcome. So what we want to talk about tonight is we want to know more about you. We want to learn about how you got into politics, maybe some of your background, but specifically we want to jump in and really talk about the bill. And you are one of the two co-authors on the Pennsylvania Adult Cannabis Use Bill. And that is obviously a big deal, and we're very appreciative of you doing that. We want to learn, but let's take a step back for a second and learn more about your background. Where did you grow up, and where are you from?
Sure. And I've been in office since 2020. I got elected in the middle of the pandemic, so that was an interesting ride. But I've kind of lived here, there, and everywhere. My family has lived in northeastern Pennsylvania. We've lived in West Virginia. I graduated high school in North Dakota. So I've kind of been all over the place. But yeah, I went to school at Bloomsburg in central Pennsylvania, and then I worked in DC for about 4 years before I decided that I wanted to go to law school. And so moved back to Pittsburgh to go to Pitt for law school. I graduated in 2016, and then I started clerking for a judge on the Commonwealth Court, which for anybody who's not familiar with it, the Commonwealth Court is a Pennsylvania state court that it's an intermediate appellate court. So Pennsylvania actually has two intermediate appellate courts. And so the Commonwealth Court handles a lot more of the technical kind of cases. So, tax law, municipal law, election law. So it's more on the dry side, but stuff that I'm really interested in. But I was clerking for the judge in November of 2016 when Donald Trump was elected, and I'm a Democrat. So, I was very, very drunk on November 8th, and then I was very hungover on November 9th. And November 10th, I was like, you know what? If that guy can win elected office, I am eminently qualified to be in elected office. And I didn't know what I wanted to run for at that point, but I knew that I wanted to run because I wanted to, have a voice in things. And, I kind of realized that it wasn't enough to just elect people that, were, agreed with me. We needed to be electing people that were actually actively advocating for the kinds of things that we wanted to see in the world, the kinds of changes we wanted to see in the world. So it sort of ended up being a situation where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of waiting for other people to do the right thing. And so I'm just going to do it myself.
So it's funny that you're saying that, because you kind of answered a question I had. So when you were in school and you decided to go for your law degree, this wasn't exactly the way you saw this going down, right?
No, not at all. I actually figured that I would be a public defender.
Okay.
That was my goal. And so I I clerked for 2 years on the Commonwealth Court, a year of working and doing insurance defense, which was absolutely not in my wheelhouse. And then I ended up at a firm that actually does criminal defense work, but on the private. So, and then I was elected. So, it's been an interesting trajectory that I've been, but kind of the funny thing is the approach that I have of like, I'm done waiting for other people to do the thing that needs to get done, is how I got into office. It's also how I ended up with HB 2500, and introducing legislation to legalize cannabis.
And God bless you for that.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
And that was great. So you said it is a bipartisan effort, right?
It is. This is the first. Yeah, so my co-prime sponsor, his name is Aaron Coffer. He represents an area in Luzerne County, in northeastern Pennsylvania, and he and I kind of both came to this of just like somebody just needs to do something, because we are talking in generalities about what it is that we want to get done, and how we should legalize it and how we should do things. And we had hearings on this, and the governor's office was supposedly working on this, and our leadership was supposedly working on this, and a chair of a committee was supposedly working on this, and nobody was introducing anything. And
So a lot of soldiers, a lot of soldiers were marching around, but there was no real organization to it.
Yeah. So it's like, nobody had a draft. Nobody had language to talk about for specifics. And, the funny thing is when I initially, we were talking about introducing this, I thought this is basically just going to be sort of a marker bill. This is going to be a bill with language that says this is how we could do something, just to spark the conversation to get into more specifics about how we should do it. And then it really kind of took on a life of its own, beyond what I kind of expected that it would. And now it has gotten the traction as sort of maybe the bill of how we legalize it, because it's not the only bill in the Pennsylvania legislature that's proposing to legalize cannabis, but the other proposals that are out there have been out there for a while and have kind of lost ground, lost traction, and this one is continuing to pick up steam. And I think that all of the people who've been working on those bills have come and work of our bill.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because, I knew there were some different pieces of legislation. And I guess if they sit long enough, then they don't really go anywhere and there's no conversation around it. And I want to keep talking about the bill, but there was one question that eluded me before to your background. So the one thing I wanted to know is when you woke up drunk on November 8th, right? What how did you go from there to I'm doing something? That's the part before we go too deep in the bill, I really want to know what's that look like?
Oh, yeah. So November 9th, I was very hungover, and I walked into chambers, and it was just silent. That no one was talking in our entire chambers. Like normally it was a very boisterous office to work in. We're sitting in our offices yelling out at somebody else of like, hey, I need you to do this, or like, I need this. So to walk in and it just be silent was very disconcerting, but also really helpful for when you're hungover and you don't want to talk to people.
He gets it. He gets it.
I get it.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, that's ends up being a lot of how I kind of process things generally, is like I work through basically the stages of grief where I'm like, I'm sad, and then I'm mad, and then I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna do it myself.
Something about it. Yeah.
And that's really kind of where, so it's like I can be upset about this and I can shout into the void, or I can actually try and affect some change.
And you know what? I give you all the credit in the world, because a lot of people, and I'm sure you know them as well as I do, did a lot of that. But what you did is you did something about it. You stepped in the arena and said, okay, I don't like it, I'm doing something about it. And it's the same, and I think it's the same from what we're hearing about this bill. You saw a lot of staleness, stagnation, and you're like, let me do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Can you tell us?
It's a characteristic that my leadership both appreciates and also is like, but what if you didn't?
Hey, well, you were inspired.
But you did. So,
Yeah.
but you did. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, House Bill 2500, right, that you co-sponsored. What does it basically contain? So, what is it? What are the major parts?
It basically it takes what it does is it takes best practices and lessons learned from all the different states that have legalized thus far, and it combines it together with what the proposal that the sort of the one open proposal that the governor has put out there, which is that he wants the program to run through the Department of Agriculture. And then also with, what stakeholders have been talking about and activists and how do we make this something that is equitable and socially just and acknowledges the harm that we have done in the past for having criminalized marijuana. And one of the things that, for me with a criminal justice background, I kept asking people and nobody really seemed to have the answer for it, was, automatic expungements of marijuana related offenses. Okay, that makes sense. And that I think is pretty obvious for anybody who's talking about legalization, whether you're Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. I'm like, what about though the next step? Because frequently marijuana is the first interaction with the criminal justice system, but not the last. And so if you have a marijuana related conviction and then you have a conviction that you are actively serving time on that's maybe not marijuana related, what do we do about those people? Because a lot of those people they're sentenced based on their prior record score, which is impacted by their prior marijuana conviction.
Yep.
And if that is expunged, then their prior record score drops. This means that there's a number of people that could be serving an illegal sentence because they've been sentenced to something that's longer than what they're actually, would have been up for otherwise.
Do we know how many people are currently in Pennsylvania incarcerated that this would affect?
That I don't know. But I would say it's probably a pretty good number. There are a good number of people that have, at least some kind of a marijuana conviction. And whether that then gets you into, something else down the line. Again, statistics show us that, marijuana is somebody's first introduction to the criminal justice system. It's very often not their last. And so it's probably a good number of people. But it would have to be, you'd have to be actively serving time while, when this was enacted. So it may not be a ton of people, but it may impact some people. So largely what this bill does, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, does it expunge for those who have served time already? Does it go back in retrospect and erase anything or expunge anything?
So it does go back and it expunges marijuana related offenses. So it charges the administrative office of the court to go through, find marijuana related convictions, submit them to the state police for expungement.
Would that be an automatic process, or people will have to apply for that?
It would be automatic.
Automatic. Oh, that's great.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So basically this is a 200-page bill, so we could talk about all the specifics forever. But
well, we have some. We have. we had some
Yeah.
general questions about it. So maybe we'll hit some of the general ones.
Yeah.
So what was
Okay.
the obviously this is you guys are working together. You and is it Aaron again?
Aaron. Yeah, Aaron
Aaron.
Coffer.
Yeah, so tell me about that. Like, working together across the table, bipartisan. Like, was this a very natural thing? Did you guys have to like kind of figure it out along the way, or was like, because I know Republicans don't necessarily love the whole cannabis scene.
Yeah, Aaron Coffer is an interesting case because he's actually the only Republican in the Pennsylvania House, who has actually come out publicly and said that he is in favor of legalization.
Wow.
Now, there are some Republicans that are in favor of legalization in the House, but they won't come out publicly and say it, because of district issues or things like that. But they'll vote for it if we bring it up. But Coffer is the only person that's actually been willing to come out and say we should legalize cannabis. And so he actually, it was stakeholders that sort of brought us together as here. You guys seem really motivated to try and just get something done. What if we work together and we put together a bill, from all the lessons learned from the hearings that were held, from stuff, and you guys introduce it. And it was like, sure, I think that it will at least get the conversation started, which is what we need to do.
Right. So you guys
and one of the things that we did. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say you guys just had to submit something on the 13th, did you not, with the bill itself?
Actually, what I was going to say is one of the things that we did that's not normal is we actually attached our draft language to the co-sponsorship memo. So when you're introducing bills, generally what you do is you introduce a co-sponsorship memo that says, this is what the bill that I'm going to introduce does or will do. And so please send to co-sponsor this. But normally you don't actually see the language until it's been introduced. What we did was decided
That's
to
a good catch.
Intervene. But what we did was actually take the language that we had drafted initially, and we attached it to the co-sponsorship memo so that people could actually start talking about the specific language immediately. And the goal was to have a conversation about, what's good in this bill, what's not good in this bill, how should things be changed, and how do we, tweak it, make it better, so that we can actually start having a conversation about specific language and specific ideas, so that we can actually get this done.
Yep. So what do you see the projection as? So now it's been submitted. You guys have kind of done it in an interesting way, maybe a little different or not as normal as you would expect. What do you expect to happen next?
I think it's really going to depend on our leadership, on the governor, because the governor has said that he wants to legalize cannabis. He has not come forward with a specific plan of how he wants to do that beyond that he wants it to be in run by the Department of Agriculture. The health committee had been holding hearings about, cannabis legalization. And seemingly they may be trying to introduce their own legislation. But again, nobody has seen a draft of any of that. But we don't actually have that much time left in our session to get it done. So we have session for 3 days next week. We have session for the 3 days the week after. We have session again the week of October 23rd. And then we're scheduled for session the Tuesday and Wednesday after Veterans Day. Mm-hmm. And that is all of the session days that are left through the end of the session. If we don't get it done and that to the governor's desk in that amount of time, then we will have to reintroduce it and start over again.
Now, if you do get it to his desk, hang on one second, if you do get it to his desk and he signs it before the time allows, does this mean that next November we vote or is this not put out to the citizens for election?
No, it wouldn't. It would just go into law. It would not be. It would not have to be voted on.
Gotcha.
So that's it. That's the other. So Pennsylvania actually doesn't have any have ballot referendums the way that some other states do. Like obviously Ohio legalized cannabis through ballot referendum. The only time that in Pennsylvania we vote as voters on anything are actually on approving or denying constitutional amendments. So if we, but that isn't initiated from the voters, that's initiated from the legislature. So we don't have that option, which I think that Pennsylvania probably would have legalized by now if we did actually have ballot referendums.
See, and this is what I told you we don't have voter referendums like that. You were wrong, man. Let me ask you this, Emily. What did the taxes scenario look like? You know, you guys had to put some projections together. What does this mean for the state of PA in terms of revenue?
So I swear we didn't rig this, but it is literally projected that we are looking at $420 million in revenue in the first year.
That's the best number.
Hey, that works.
It's not rigged, she said. She said it's not rigged.
So that brings an interesting question. So, you know, Pennsylvania doesn't have the referendums. It's kind of, you put things in the law. But what effect or what kind of pressure or what kind of motivation did the neighboring states have, with New Jersey being recreational, Maryland, New York? Seeing, Pennsylvania late in the game, and, we would love to have that $400 million, a few years ago. So, so I'm glad you're bringing in, fresh new ideas and innovative ways of trying to move this thing forward. And then that's what
it's a good question, because how much did that motivate, the folks that you're working with now in terms of like what's happening with these other states around us and the revenue that they're bringing in?
Yeah, I mean, every single state that touches Pennsylvania, with the exception of West Virginia, has legalized at this point. And with Ohio, they literally set up almost all of their dispensaries right along Pennsylvania and West Virginia borders because they know that we haven't legalized and that we are a market that they can capitalize on. So they have set up their dispensaries knowing that people from Pennsylvania are going to go to Ohio and they're going to purchase product, and that revenue is going to flow out of our state, and it is.
But it's illegal. Number one, it's illegal to do that. Number one. So let's point that out for a second, because it's not like while they're doing it, but it's no different than what's happening in New Jersey either. And New Jersey has even gone as far as putting billboards over in Pennsylvania, encouraging Pennsylvania citizens to go across the bridge, make a purchase, which is not even legal. I want to talk about advertising in a second, but yes, from the revenue perspective, Todd's question was really good. Like, how does that play into everyone's thought process, especially Republicans?
Yeah. I mean, when we put out our co-sponsorship memo, that was basically the first line of like, Ohio has legalized this, and they're going to be up and right end of the year. And this is going to be a problem in Pennsylvania. And have to legalize sooner rather than later. And so here's a proposal to actually get on, and let's stop dragging our feet, because we're losing revenue, and especially even more so than that we're losing revenue out of state, is that Pennsylvania is looking at really needing to bring in more revenue to pay for schools and other things that we have to pay for. And we need new sources of revenue, and so not having that income is sort of short-sighted for us in that capacity as well.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Another good point to make is, aside from the revenue, is the safety aspect. people buying off the street, you don't know what you're getting, right? There's all kinds of things laced in marijuana. It's crazy out there. So it's good to know what product you're getting, what's in it, and what's your flavor.
And that's like the number one thing we hear from we hear that most from females, because often they're put in a vulnerable position wanting to make a purchase, and if you're not at least right now, if you're not medicinally licensed to do it, then you've got that problem. And I think it just alleviates a lot of issues for a lot of people. I really do.
Yeah. Well, and even beyond that, I'm sure that you guys are seeing all of these, smoke and vape shops that are setting up and putting signs in their windows that are saying, no medical carded, THC, yada yada. And that is also not regulated.
That's
There
correct.
are no restrictions on those products. So people are buying these that are sold in stores, in vape shops. This is where you get your vape pen, and this is, you also can get, THC. And it seems legitimate and it seems safe, but there are no restrictions. There are no checks and balances on that.
Zero.
And that's one of the things that my bill, that our bill does, is it regulates that market as well.
So you bring up, that's a really good point, because we just did a trade show recently, and we were astonished by how many companies representing that side of the marketplace were there at the trade show. So there's tons of money in it, or they wouldn't be there. So we get that. How do you guys get past the whole farm bill? Because the farm bill is what really is the loophole in the farm bill that allows the hemp farm bill that allows for this to happen. How do you guys tighten it up in PA without the support of the federal government to tighten up the hemp bill?
So basically what our bill does is says that any kind of it basically defines, the Delta 8, which is really the specific synthetic thing. And it basically, it defines it as, a marijuana that is regulated because of THC content. And so it falls, like, you have to get a license to sell it in the same exact way as everything else. So it basically brings all of those products together and treats them the same.
And is there any new enforcement with this bill that allows any funding towards enforcement, or a different type of subset of enforcement that handles this?
Yeah, so we set aside 10 of the revenue to go to law enforcement for actually enforcing the pieces of the legislation. We also send funds to the municipalities and counties that have dispensaries, so that they can also, effectively regulate, the dispensaries that are in their area. So we do spend, we do give a decent chunk of the revenue to actually enforcing the law and making sure they're complying with it.
Gotcha. Is there any provisions for consumption lounges in your legislation?
There isn't. I don't think it's not necessarily. We didn't go that far.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that our bill specifically provides for, but it's also not prohibited under our. So, if folks are creative, I think there's a way to do it. But
there you go.
But it's not something we specifically provide for.
Yeah, well, I think it's a natural progression, and the right way to do it is the way you did it. You put too much in it, there's a lot to overcome.
Well, it's harder to get past, too.
Let's get in, and then we'll take it from
there.
Yeah, because usually things don't get taken away. Once you get it, you don't get it taken away. Then you can kind of add on from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, we've gotten a lot of feedback from people who are really big proponents of home grow, and I completely understand the idea. But the problem is that, like you guys are talking about, if you put too much too early, it won't get through. And so if we are if we add home grow in the current makeup of the legislature, where the Democrats control the House but the Republicans control the Senate, if we put home grow in there, then potentially that kills the entire bill. So I think, we tried to thread the needle of trying to be aggressive in how we're legalizing and how we're giving people opportunities and making sure that we are in communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, that we are prioritizing individuals and companies that are social equity applicants, and recognizing the harm, but also that we're not loading this with so much up front that you're not going to be able to get it through.
Yeah, I get
a
that.
more conservative.
No, I get that. And, I guess I'd be remiss, or I'll catch a lot of shit from on my end for not bringing up. I mean, home grow was on my question list for you, so you kind of hit it before I did. But there's a lot of us who think that, home grow is the real freedom in in making the plant free for everybody to be able to consume. They feel like, well, it's a plant, I should be able to grow it, and it also allows me to know what's in it. There's a lot of purists out there that don't necessarily want some of the techniques that are used by commercial growers and so forth. So I get what you're saying, and listen, I thank you for doing this, and I think something's better than nothing, and you have to hedge your position to see what's most realistic to actually get something passed. So I'm with you. But I want to make sure I just say it, so at least for our group and our folks, they know where we stand.
Yeah, and I completely understand, and I'm open to it. But I think that what we also need to remember is that if we think about legalizing cannabis in the same way that we sort of re-legalized alcohol. That when we re-legalized it, we put restrictions on whether or not people could be producing alcohol at home. And it's really only been relatively recently that people have been able to, get the kinds of things that they need in order to actually distill at home.
That's a good point.
Or to brew at home.
It's a really good point.
And so it's like I'm not opposed to home grow, and I think that we eventually get there. But I think we also have to remember how we have effectively legalized illegal substances in the past, and it's a stepped method. Mm-hmm. And I think the fact that we're trying to run this through the Department of Agriculture absolutely acknowledges that this is a plant.
Yep.
This is a crop, and as we become more comfortable with it, and there's less taboos, and there's less feeling like if you have a plant like that this is that this is like a cash crop of like you're gonna steal a plant, somebody who's growing it, and then it's incredibly valuable. When things kind of level out, I think you see an opportunity for
and listen,
out of the gate. I think it's really dicey.
Yeah, you put it in perspective. This is a Quaker state. You look at the alcohol and our antiquated ways of throwing that, and it's been so long. So you put it in perspective. One thing at a time.
And this is where the expression Rome wasn't built in a day. It wasn't built overnight. That's what they say. So yeah, it's a step-by-step process, and we're good with that. I know you don't have a ton of time, Emily, so let me ask you some quick questions real quick. This one's near and dear to us because at Cough Country and Cough Country TV, our whole purpose is to provide advertising opportunities to the cannabis space that has very little opportunity to advertise. We briefly talked about the example of the billboard in PA for a New Jersey dispensary encouraging illegal activity. I guess my question is there any provisions in the bill that you guys have paved the way a little bit more for advertising in, with some of the businesses that will be operating in this environment?
Yeah. So we allow advertising. The limit on advertising are more about the content of the advertising, in terms of you can advertise, but you can't be displaying the product. You can't, like, somebody can't be smoking in your ad. You can't advertise within a certain distance to a school. New Jersey ran into that problem, and it actually was the billboard industry that brought that to us. So it was a tweak that we made from our initial proposal to what we actually introduced. Was they said, "Hey, we ran into this issue in New Jersey where advertising marijuana in sight of a school." And so, you might want to put in some specific distance restrictions on that.
Gotcha.
And I was like, great point. So we restrict, like, it can't be marketed to kids. It can't, look like candy. But advertising is allowed.
Good.
So
Well, I'm kind of glad you
there
guys
are
addressed
certain
it.
parameters, but it's there. Yeah.
Yeah, we're super happy that you addressed it, because often it goes completely unaddressed, to be completely honest with you. So, that's really good. Real quick, additional licensees for dispensaries, and specifically minority communities that were affected in a negative way by cannabis in general. Will there be some more opportunities for them in this new, call it the PA Gold Rush?
Yes. And actually, specifically, they are supposed to be ranked first. So, I mean, obviously, Pennsylvania right now has no minority-owned cannabis businesses in any capacity, and that's a huge problem. So what we do is we basically charge the Department of Agriculture with putting together a point system, and the people who have been impacted by the war on drugs, people of color, women, veterans, people who have convictions or expunged convictions of marijuana related offenses, they actually get additional points to move up the line in order to be able to qualify for the first licenses that are coming out of the gate. So the goal is basically to make it more difficult for the more established players to jump to the head of the line, and allow people who have been kind of shut out to actually have first crack at it.
So
The other thing that we do is put money into a business development fund, to help those applicants specific with resources, business planning, all of that stuff, to make sure that not only do they get the license, but they actually can get to doors open. Because that's what New York ran into, was they gave all these licenses out, and yet nobody had the support and the capital and the investment and the experience to get to doors open. And so the illicit market was able to jump in and start taking over, and now they're playing whack-a-mole with that.
That is the point.
Taking a lesson learned.
We've covered it on our news a bunch of times. The New York situation, though they're trying to get it under control, is so far out of control that and they held licenses up. They had people that were waiting, that were in line, and they only allowed a few of them to start. I mean, you're basically with a state like New York and a city that doesn't sleep, you're just encouraging that that activity to happen. But New York's another shit show, and hopefully that we're not in that position. I am happy.
That was what we're trying to do. We're trying to learn from New York, actually emulate Ohio, Maryland, a little bit. Learn from, and also of Illinois, who had a medical program, and they kept it separate from their recreational program. And now they're kind of trying to unwind that a little bit, because it's gotten really complicated, because they have two sets of regulations, and in sort of one dispensary, and so that becomes a real issue. So we move the medical program over from the Department of Health into the Department of Agriculture, so that they would oversee everything.
That's interesting. And not all the states have done it that way through the agriculture department, correct? Other states have not done it that way.
Yeah, know of any states that have done it that way. I think maybe one, but I couldn't tell you
But it makes sense.
which state.
But it makes 100% sense. It makes sense that that's what you would do. Here's what I'm happy about. Listen, I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy that you're explaining all this. I'm also happy that Todd has a better chance of getting a license for a dispensary than I do.
Well, I had to get some more points, help a brother out. So we'll use that. To get some more points. Maybe I need to get in trouble a little bit. Get some more points. And bring it to the table.
There you go. There you go. So Emily, I was going to ask you. I'm sorry.
It's under the wire.
Yeah, you can't just get in trouble now. You have to have been in trouble, brother.
Okay, all right.
It doesn't work like that.
I'm going to dissuade anybody from trying to get convicted of a marijuana related.
Listen to Emily. She knows. She knows what she's talking about. It's not the way to go about getting something.
Okay, I'll listen to the good advice.
There you go. So we know you're tight for time, and we know this is a re-election year for you. Do you want to tell our viewers your platform and where your district is, and if you're in that district, why they should vote for you? I'm going to tell them why they should vote for you at the end, because I think it's very simple. And this is the beautiful thing. We haven't talked about whether I'm a Democrat or Republican. We know you are, because we haven't talked about Todd. And what's interesting about cannabis is that it really is one of the true things that allows people that are in this particular lifestyle to kind of come together on something that they have in common on. And it really is one of the great connectors. And so I appreciate that you came on here. But tell us about your overall platform. You're up for election, and tell people they got to vote for you.
Yeah, so I represent areas of the city of Pittsburgh, as well as northern suburbs. So parts of the north side of Pittsburgh, Ross Township, Bellevue Borough, Avalon Borough, and Westview Borough. I got into office because I started running for office because I wanted to help people. And the thing that I love about this office is the ability to have conversations with people and say, that sounds like a solvable problem. Let's solve it. And so, I've been working a lot on criminal justice reform issues. I've been working a lot on hunger related issues. I'm the House chair of the Hunger Caucus. I am the thorn in the side of my leadership when it comes to criminal justice reform. And so those are probably the two big things that I really work and trying to really apply, logic, but also science and studies and what we know about the reality of criminal justice, and why it is that we need to change things. And we, lock them up and throw away the key doesn't work. Increasing criminal penalties for things doesn't work. It doesn't deter anybody from committing the crime, because here's fundamentally the question. If you were to commit a burglary, how much time would you be facing in prison?
10 years.
I don't even know.
But that's the thing, is like, people don't know. It's not a deterrent. The things that deter crime, one is swiftness of punishment, and two, immediacy of punishment. So if you believe that you are going to get caught and you're going to get punished immediately for it, you're far more likely to not do the thing than if you are going to go away for 20 years for having done the thing. So we have to apply what we understand about what works it to make our communities safer when we're talking about policy. That's really what I've been trying to do is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is the definition of insanity. And so we should not be criminalizing new drugs that are coming on the market, in order to stop people from using drugs. It doesn't work. It's not working for anybody. We're seeing it with Trent, and now gas station heroin. They're trying to, we did just add xylazine, which is tranq, to the Drug Control Act. And I fought really hard to not have that happen because, most people who have tranq in their drugs have no idea that's in their drugs. They're not consenting to it. but now they can go to prison for up to 5 years for it, which is just madness. So all of that is to say, what I try to do is apply, logic and science to policy in order to make sure that we are making decisions that make sense for what actually works. And, so that is always my tactic when I'm, working on this. So, I'm running because we need more people like that. I'm running for re-election because I want to stay and I want to see more people like that come into office. I want to enact policies that.
Well, listen, I commend you, Emily. Not only for waking up one day and realizing that you've got to do something about things. I mean, I really do. And there's so many people who talk about it and never do a damn thing, and I just commend you for doing it. I think I even more commend you for taking the damn cannabis bull by the horns and pushing this thing forward, because you know what, it needs to be done. And again, from our perspective, we want to say thank you. This was super informative for me. I learned a lot. We had a bunch of questions. I know Emily's tight on time and she's been super, cooperative in being able to answer these. I think it's super helpful, and I think people are going to learn a lot by being able to see this. And so I just wanted to go ahead and say thank you again for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Any last words for you, Todd?
You're working for the people, and we appreciate it, and the citizens appreciate it.
That's right, citizens. PA citizens and Cough Country citizens. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. You can hang out for a second. We're just going to wrap up real quick. So basically, we learned a lot tonight. And I really appreciate Emily being here and the efforts that she's making. So guys, make sure that you subscribe to Late Night Green. We're on almost every week. We're working on getting ourselves up to 2 days a week. So subscribe, tell us what you think. If you are in the Pittsburgh area, and you don't know who your rep is, make sure you find out. If it's Emily, you guys need to vote for her. She's building bridges, and she's making things happen, and that's important in our state. So again, thank you, everybody. This has been a good show. I enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Thanks.